Today, we're going to talk about racism. When I was a little girl, I lived on an island as a missionary with my family. I won't name the island, but we'll just say it was in the Caribbean. Before we go on, let me just say that I am very, very white. Like, super white. I glow in the dark, which of course makes it completely appropriate for me to tell you about the day racism was solved. I'm kidding, it wasn't solved. Of course it wasn't. But this story has been on my mind lately, and with the current cultural climate, I think it's important to explain where I stand and why. When you live outside of the States, you gain a perspective that you wouldn't have otherwise. When I was young, living on that island, my mom liked to say that I was colorblind, which, sadly, I was. I consider this sad because it meant I really missed the nuance of certain situations. When you're colorblind, it's impossible to fight back against racism because you can't see racism as the reason behind certain behaviors people may have. On the island, I was in a strange situation because I was one of the only white kids who was, well, poor. Missionaries aren't usually known for their buckets of cash, you know. Most of my clothes, for example, came as hand-me-downs from my friends, and someone at the church hosting us paid for us to attend their private school, which is where my story takes place. You see, I was a new kid. I came in halfway through November, and after I started, we had another new kid, and she was Jamaican. And for some reason, the other kids just did not like her. I thought it might have been the way she talked or that she was taller than everyone else, but I noticed that the new friends I had acted very strangely around this girl. One day they told me I couldn't be friends with both them and her, and at first I obliged, but I realized very quickly that something about that was very wrong. So I told my new friends that I was going to be friends with them, and I was also going to be friends with her. At the time, I was a popular kid. I was outgoing, outspoken, and the daughter of missionaries. You can't get any more desirable as a 5-year-old in a private Christian school. So they sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, "Oh, okay." And we all went back to playing together as if nothing had happened. It wasn't until later that I learned the reason behind their behavior, as explained by my mother when I told her this story. See, for some reason, the people on this island just did not like Jamaicans. I don't remember why, and it didn't seem to be about skin color necessarily, but Jamaicans were oppressed there, big time. Essentially, these kids were following the views of their parents. And because I didn't grow up with them, it didn't click for me. It's not like I could have done anything different. My decision at the time and announcement that we were all going to have to be friends regardless is really the best I could have done in that situation. But because I didn't see color, I missed the most important part of the story. Racism is real, and I have witnessed it. It wasn't until years later that I reflected on this memory to my mother and she explained the context. By that time, I was an adult, and I'd been denying that racism still existed. Maybe if I had known the context, I would have understood what happened. I would have been able to come to a different conclusion earlier on. I wouldn't have denied something I'd witnessed with my own eyes. And it wasn't just this one instance in kindergarten. I've witnessed racism at other points in my life too, and again, it just never clicked. When I was 14, my great uncle tried to insult me by telling me he would find me a black boyfriend on the school bus he drove. And because I didn't see color, I didn't understand the insult. I knew he was trying to make fun of me somehow, but I didn't understand the context. I told him that it would be tough to have a long-distance relationship with someone I had never met in person. We were just visiting, and he lived 2 states away, in the South. And I was proud of myself for having a calm and collected response. But for years, I was baffled by his reaction. This man looked at me as if I'd grown 3 heads. And it wasn't until years later that I realized he was expecting me to be grossed out by the idea of having a boyfriend with a darker complexion than mine. Here's the thing, if you don't see color, you don't see racism. And if you don't see racism, you can't fight racism at its core. You'll even deny that it exists. So if you've been describing yourself as colorblind, maybe it's time to take those blinders off.